If you want to do well with women, you are going to have to understand it as an art. You don't need to be fake, but you do need to be strategic. Every move or non-move that you make makes you more or less desirable. And if you're naive to that, you're not going to get anywhere. If, on the other hand, you come to understand women generally and how to be both artful and genuine in seduction, you've got a shot. To help in this effort, I'm joined by best-selling author Robert Greene. What should men learn from the fact that women fantasize about vampires and billionaires?
Seduction involves the desire to lose control. And men share this as well, which is why men are often attracted to women who are slightly dangerous, women who are either a little bit crazy or women who have this incredible sexual energy that can almost dominate a man. So seduction involves crossing up closely to that border of something that's dangerous, where you might be overwhelmed, particularly in our world today, where things are getting more and more Puritan and people are more constrained by political correctness and all these tenets that we're supposed to adhere to, that we lead rather dull, constricted lives. We're not playful enough. Things are too ordered and conventional and regimented in our world. But secretly, we want to get out of that. Secretly, we are drawn to what is dangerous, to what we can't really control. Seduction is a sense of I'm letting go a little bit. I'm entering a world where the other person is leading me through an adventure, and that's the excitement. That's the kind of transgressive element. A dangerous person is always going to have that. A vampire I can understand. Billionaire is a different thing. I mean, billionaire has to do with security and comfort and money and the sense of a man who's made it, he must have some quality that got him into that position kind of thing. The fantasy of you can have any kind of object that you desire, like in a fairy tale, because this man has billions of dollars, so he can afford whatever you want. I prefer, when I'm thinking about seduction, to deal with kind of real life situation scenarios. I understand romantic fiction, but romantic fiction isn't what aren't characters in real life that we're going to be encountering. So it's a little bit distanced from me.
It's interesting. The way I look at that, and the reason I found the book A Billion Wicked Thoughts so intriguing, is I think it is absolutely revelatory what men and women spend their time fantasizing about. It certainly gives you a sense of the underlying algorithm that's running in all of our brains. The fact that male pornography and male pornographic searches are all around like body parts and things like, it's basically just body parts. That really, there's not even an and there. It's just, that's what male searches are all about. They're describing the thing they want to see. So it's all like hyper visual. Whereas the fact that women are into a totally different kind of erotic stimulation, to me, that alone was already revelatory, that they like story-based, like they want to read, that their porn is read. Because what I'm hoping guys will get out of this episode is an understanding that there is an art to seduction. You're not being fake by acknowledging that. And the reason I wanted to start with where people's fantasies lie is because if you understand that, you understand the algorithm that you're trying to trip into. Now, of course, you're going to do it in a way that's far more real and grounded. I'm not saying to act like a vampire, but to just address your work as it relates to both the vampire and the billionaire, at least as I read it, is you talk a lot about there is a type, and I forget which name it is for the type of seduction archetype, but where they're playing with androgyny. And
the dandy.
The dandy. Okay, so the dandy blends the two. So there's a familiarity for the woman of I think of vampires as being somewhat androgynous.
Definitely.
They are usually ultra refined. There's an aristocratic air to them.
Yeah.
And so you have the dandy portrayal in that, mixing the androgyny, but then you need like you talk a lot about Errol Flynn, who had flashes of danger. And so to me, that's the vampire. The vampire is obviously in the extreme, obviously in the abstract, it's fiction, but it really does hint at something real. And so getting people to understand this is the algorithm that's running in a woman's brain, that it is very different than the algorithm that's running in the male brain. And so your job is going to be, if you're going to seduce somebody, again, this is me quoting you, You have to be them focused and not you focused.
Yeah, but then, it's what's a little bit tricky here is you have to think that each woman has their own separate fantasy. So first of all, it's a particular type of woman that's reading romantic fiction. Not all women are reading that kind of thing. But each person that you deal with has their own particular fantasies, right? And you want to be very sensitive to that. So if you come at this with this idea that women have these preset kind of ideals, then you're already in trouble, because you want, as far as being you-oriented, you want to drop everything and you want to enter their world and look at the signs that they're giving out as to what their fantasies are. If they happen to be reading that kind of fiction and they happen to be reading those kinds of stories, then great, a little red light goes on in your head. But you want to be looking at all the other signs that they're giving out as well, the movies that they watch, the music that they listen to, the clothes that they wear. If a woman seems to be particularly repressed, that's a sign that they're going to be attracted to that danger element, right? So you want to be paying deep attention to the individual. This is a problem that men have in general that they need to address. They're thinking in generic terms. They're thinking that they don't individualize the woman. And the worst thing you can do in seduction is to give the other person the idea that you are coming at them and thinking of somebody else. You're thinking in terms of stereotypes. You're thinking in terms of your previous girlfriends. You're not looking at them as an individual, the kinds of things that they love, the kinds of things that you can provide them that they're missing in life. So the game is the most important game, as opposed to just thinking in terms of these categories, is dropping all of that stuff in your head and just looking at the woman and entering her world and seeing it for what it is. That's half the game of seduction. Because if they feel that you are individualizing your attention, that is absolutely the key to any kind of seduction, because we don't get any kind of individualized attention in this world. We're hungry for it, and particularly women coming from men, because men don't seem to understand the fantasy element. As you say, a fantasy is kind of a story. It's like a drama. It's going, and so when you're seducing someone, it's a story that you're bringing them into. You're creating theater. You're creating drama. You're leading them into this world just like an author will lead a reader through a series of steps, right? But you have to be very focused on them and who they are in particular. And seduction involves a sense of vulnerability, right? A sense of openness, where you're letting the other person come into you. And the word vulnerable comes from the Latin meaning wound. So vulnerable means the willingness to be wounded, right? And the archetypal image of love and seduction was Cupid with an arrow and hitting you with an arrow and wounding you with love and creating blood from it. It's like there's pain involved because you're opening yourself to another person. You're willing for them to hurt you, and you know that you could be hurt. And so the origin of seduction actually comes from our relationship to our parents. And oftentimes for a man or a woman, Jung talked about this in terms of an animus and an anima. And speaking as a man, anima figures are those kind of women that inhabit your dreams. And I have dreams all the time of that kind of anima woman. And it's usually a certain type, a certain look, certain kind of feel to it, okay? And that anima figure for the man comes mostly from these earliest relationships in childhood, like the mother figure. Generally, it could be a sibling. And when you're a boy and you're facing your mother, you're completely vulnerable, you're weak, you're dependent. And that sense of being dependent is a source of a lot of your erotic tension, but also a lot of your fears, because men are afraid of letting go, afraid of being dependent, afraid of being overwhelmed, right? So you carry within you these images of the anima and the animus. You're vulnerable in those moments, right? But what happens to you as you get older is you try and make yourself invulnerable, because life is hard, it's harsh. People are coming at you with a million different things. You retreat into yourself, into your ego, into your little castle. You build walls around yourself. And you're afraid of letting someone in. You're afraid of letting go. You're afraid of losing your defenses. And in the 2023, it's worse than ever before, because the world is very, very intrusive. People secretly want to be vulnerable. I just wrote a chapter about this in my Sublime book. in relation to the idea of love. People want to feel vulnerable. They're just afraid. And so it's, I think, very psychologically important for people today, particularly for young people, to be willing to be vulnerable and to experience what that's like, to experience letting go of your defenses. If you're hurt, how do you deal with that? Because inevitably you're going to be hurt. That builds life skills, that builds toughness, that builds a kind of thickness in you where you can endure being hurt, because life involves in all sorts of hurts, and you're able to function with it and actually invite it in. It's almost good sometimes to invite a little bit of pain in your life. When you want to get physically well and you want to exercise, you realize that getting well involves pain, it involves repetitions, it involves running so far that it hurts a little bit, right? So you want to be able to welcome a little bit of that pain. So I think where we are in our culture right now, seduction is incredibly important. And I must say that on all of my social media, when I do a little video about seduction, I get the most views of all. And the irony is that more than ever, that word seduction has like an element of, ew, I don't like that. I don't want to be seduced. Oh, what an ugly book. Oh, Robert's really evil. But secretly, people are yearning to be seduced. So that's my answer to your question.
It's a great answer. So now the thing I want to know is, all right, vulnerability is about a wound, opening ourselves up to being wounded. In going through that process, we learn a lot about ourselves and how to be, in some sort of ironic sense, by being vulnerable, you're able to develop strength and a willingness to expose yourself like that. Why are people so hungry for it now? Why, as we get more puritanical, as we have to worry about political correctness, why is it that the desire to let go becomes a thing that we're crying out for?
Well, people are generally ambivalent. I try and make a case when I talk to people that your emotions are never singular. They're never one thing. We're constant. We have many moods. Our emotions are continually passing like clouds in the sky. They're never set or fixed, right? So, as Jung points out, and a lot of other psychologists, when you have a strong quality, let's say a man who's hyper masculine, who's so tough and rugged, you can bet that underneath it is an insecurity, is a feminine streak that he is afraid of revealing. So when people reveal a strong quality, such as defensiveness, such as resistance, such as puritanical things, such as virtue signaling, such as I'm the saint and everybody else is evil, you can bet that lurking underneath is a deep, deep insecurity of I'm actually the opposite. I'm hiding the opposite. And the sense of being inauthentic, of repressing a part of ourself, is very painful. That secret self, I call it the lost self, it wants to come out. It wants to play. It wants to be like that child and go out and play and be in the world. And so when somebody enters your life who touches upon that, who has a little bit of that dark energy, and you fall for it, it's because you've been repressing it, and it's secretly what you want, very much so. I think people secretly want to be seduced now. And I see signs of it in our culture. I've seen signs of it in politics. You find a what's the word? Like a charismatic politician. There's a word I can't seem to. My mind is a little bit slow today. That has this sort of strong quality.
Like a demagogue?
Demagogue. Thank you. God, you have to be my brain today because sometimes it's like not clicking there. So the demagogue, we're attracted to the demagogue because secretly we want that kind of power. We want that dark side to come out and to play. It's all through our culture. Entertainment is reeking with this stuff. You know, you have in movies, if you want to talk about vampires and going back to your vampire thing, all of the evil characters, the seducers, yes, in the movie we may moralize them, we may say they're awful, they're horrible, we hate them, but boy, all of our attention is drawn immediately to those dark, evil characters, to those seducers, to those people who have that dark energy. People are dying for it. You know, it's been repressed, and it's what I wrote about in Human Nature, about the dark side of our shadow that we're trying to repress.
Is seduction necessarily a dark energy?
It has to involve some kind of sense of danger, of something that's a little bit naughty. So if I want to pick up a woman and I go to a bar, just throwing out a scenario here, and it's so easy. I don't even have to buy her a drink. She follows me. Oh, yes, of course, Robert. I'll go home with you. Yes, yes, you're so attractive, blah, blah, blah. There's no interest there. There's no excitement. There's no spark. But a bit of resistance, a bit of, I'm not so interested. Oh, I already have a boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. Whoa, my interest is going like that. So we are by nature attracted to what we cannot have. And I explain why that is so in the Laws of Human Nature on a chapter on the nature of our desire. Things that we can have or that we don't have excite our desire more than anything else. So a sense of resistance, a sense that we're not supposed to have this person or that they're not supposed to have us is exactly what entices us into it. So if there's no element of naughtiness, if there's no element of a slight taboo or transgressive nature, it's not going to get our juices going, our erotic, our fantasy juices and all that other stuff.
Like you, and you said this at the beginning, really the thing you want to get to is what really works. Like, where does the rubber meet the road on all this stuff? Not in fantasy land, but like for real. Somebody's going on a date. They met them online, never met them before. There's like a screen check process. You guys have had to do this sort of dumb. Some of the guys here will show me the way that they have to flirt on the apps in order to get to the first date. So how do you set it up in the flirtation to get to the date? And then how do we be maximally seductive on that date?
Well, I didn't grow up in the era of Tinder, so it's it's hard. I don't really know. I've never had to deal with it, right?
Do you think it's going to be a different set of rules? I have a feeling it's going to be the same set of rules, but it's a different playing field. I will give you that. But
well, the main thing is that I would say in a kind of macro sense is pay attention to the nonverbals. So seduction is a language that does not involve words. It involves what is not spoken. It involves your body language, your eyes, your smile, your face, how you compose your face, how you walk, how you present yourself. The places you take the woman to reveal who you are. If you take her to a pizza and beer joint, that says something as opposed to an elegant restaurant. How you dress is part of that language. Are you just wearing your shorts and t-shirt, or do you present yourself in a nice? Maybe those shorts and t-shirt for some women would work, but for a lot of women it shows you don't really care. So pay attention to all the nonverbal things, to the little signs that the woman is very, very attentive to, and be able to control that to some degree. So you want to present yourself, as they say, the most anti-seductive quality is insecurity. So it's hard to fake the nonverbal secure cues that are in the world. And a lot of that centers around the eyes and the face and the mouth and how you smile, etc. And there are weak ways of looking, and there are aggressive ways and confident ways that are directed through the eyes. But if you don't feel it, it's very hard to fake it. So you have to put yourself in a mindset, a kind of an as-if strategy, as William James said, where you feel confident, where you feel strong, you talk yourself into that mood, et cetera, and you let the nonverbals kind of communicate themselves. So you're strong, you're taking them to a place, but you're also attentive, sensitive. You're willing to reveal that slight feminine streak in you, but you're in control. You know what you're going to do. You know exactly where you want to take them. And of course, you're going to see how things play out. You don't have everything planned. That would be very anti-seductive as well. But you have a sense of this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to present myself. The flirtation is not in the words that you say, but it's in the looks that you give, in the energy that you radiate, right? In the strength that you show, and the fact that you're looking them in the eye, but not in a scary way, kind of thing. And then mirroring behavior is extremely a sign of the other person is falling under your spell. So you you smile in a certain way and you see if she responds in the same way, right? And you kind of learn how to kind of go with her energy in the moment as well. But one thing you have to be careful of is you have to use who you are. So what's flirtatious for one guy isn't going to work for the other guy, you know? So if you happen to be good with words, you know, I have to admit I'm weak at a lot of things. You know, I wasn't that quarterback in high school, et cetera, and all that stuff. But I had a way with words, you know, and I had a way of kind of weaving a world with the words that I said, with the metaphors, with the things that I said. And so I would kind of use my flirtatious style was to kind of envelop them in these kind of images that I would create. And that worked for me. Sometimes it didn't work because some women weren't interested in that. They wanted the quarterback. But for a lot of women, that was my style. What is your style? I don't know what it is, but it has to fit who you are.
I think that is very good advice. The thing that I would put out there is the big click for me was when I realized that I needed to have absolutely no fear of loss. And so going into a situation, you met them online, you guys have had some flirtatious exchanges. One of the things that's really anti-seductive, to use your phrase, is if you feel needy, if you're thirsty at all, like you really have to be what I call aggressively yourself. Go ahead.
One thing you have to keep in mind, though, is if the woman seems to be resistant, and then you just wilt at that moment and you cut it off and you go, oh, this isn't going to work. Man, you are so stupid. You are such a bad seducer. Women are testing you often. And by their showing you that maybe they're not interested, they might actually be interested. But they want to see, are you willing to pursue them? Are you willing to deal with some obstacles in the way? You know, are you willing to move past their resistance, not physically forcing them. But if they don't seem so receptive to you on that first date, that doesn't mean you have to give up. It just means give it a second date and show that you're still interested in them is a very powerful message. It means I can deal with maybe your kind of somewhat pissy side or your sort of negative side or your kind of pickiness. You know, I'm still there. I'm still interested. Okay, that shows that you're willing to jump over this one hoop that I've set for you. So just immediately wilting is a bad sign.
No, agreed. My advice would be if somebody is in that situation, somebody's displaying something they don't like. I mean, look, I'm not going to say it at everything that comes up, but for the most part, I would try to be playful with that.
Yeah.
And if you can really stay centered, if you can be somewhat unflappable, and what I always have said about the way that I was with Lisa was I was aggressively myself.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't afraid of losing her. Now I was still strategic about the way that I packaged myself. Like I said, this is a game of marketing. You are going to be who you really are, but you need to bundle that in a way that's going to communicate who you are well. And if I know that one of the things that people are going to be most attracted to is somebody that is confident, cool, then I need to be confident in who I am. And also, if you really want to get people's attention, be counterintuitive, be interesting, like say things that they couldn't have predicted that are real. They're true to who you are. But if you can find those things where it's like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. You're coming at something from an oblique angle. Then it's like, okay, you're not exchangeable. This isn't just I'm trying on somebody that looks different but is exactly the same as everybody else. It's like you have the confidence to say something. You're like, I don't know how this is going to land, but it is true, and therefore I'm going to say it. And the way that I see dating is you're throwing the bat symbol up in the sky. You're not trying to win the person over. I mean, you're trying to seduce. Don't get me wrong. There's an agenda there, but you want to make sure you're seducing the right person. And so in the beginning of this, I'm just going to be, this is who I am, packaged in a way that is meant to elicit a response from the right person. So I'm not going to make it hard to be interested in who I am and all of that. But I'm going to be myself. I'm going to say things that are unexpected. This was the same discovery I had with interviewing was in the early days. It was like my maybe 5th interview. And I did the whole interview. And at the end of the interview, I said, hey, do you mind if we start over? I want to film this again because I'm either going to quit doing this because I was bored out of my mind because I wasn't asking the questions I really wanted to ask. I was asking the questions I thought I was supposed to ask. And now I want to ask what I really care about. And he was game. And so we refilmed it. And that was the beginning of me actually having a career as an interviewer. It was when I was like, I don't care if this is the question people want me to ask. I'm going to ask the question I'm actually interested in. And bringing out that kind of intrigue, especially if you can focus it on them. So if I'm asking you questions that maybe other people haven't asked from an angle people haven't asked it, or I have a follow-up question that is surprising and shows I'm really paying attention, I actually care, it'll get pretty interesting pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things that I would add to that. First of all, as I say in The Art of Seduction, any kind of moralizing, judging quality is very anti-seductive. So you're very tolerant, you're very open, you're not there to judge the other person. And if they make a comment, you don't want to touch upon politics, etc. But just the sense that it's a non-judgmental environment is very seductive because we live in a world that's so partisan. But the other thing is, so when we talk about interviews, I've done hundreds of these over the years, podcasters, including yourself. You're one of my favorites.
Thank you, sir.
And I could notice a difference between interviewers. The ones that come with a preset agenda of questions, not just an opening question, but a whole set of questions, and they're not really paying attention to you and your answers, and they're kind of in their heads and they're thinking about their next question, etc. They make me uncomfortable, and I don't do as well. But if the person is interviewing me is in the moment, they're kind of responding, they're alive, they're giving me, body language, verbal cues, their eyes, and we're interacting, then I open up to them, and then there's a nice flow. It's a similar thing between a man and a woman. You're in the moment. I can't say that enough. You're in the moment. You're not in your head going, does she like me? Am I going to have sex with her tonight? Do I find her that attractive? You're in the goddamn moment. You're alive. You're attuned. You're listening. And I can tell you, my wife has said this, and I known it from other women before I met her, is I would listen very deeply, and then I would hear something that kind of signaled to me a sign of something that they were interested in or something that said something about who they are. And then 4 hours later or the next day, I would bring it up again, wrapped in my own little way of wrapping things up. And they go, whoa, you have no idea how much that impresses a woman because it says, I was paying attention. I was listening to them, and I brought back what they said later is very powerful. So be in the moment. Don't be thinking about your next question, your next step, how you're going to, what you're going to be doing next, but be alive and be attentive and be in the flow.
The discussion between Robert Greene and Bilyeu revolves around the concept of seduction, focusing on what men can learn from the fact that women often fantasize about vampires and billionaires. The key points include, number 1, desire to lose control. Seduction involves the desire to lose control, and men share this desire. Men are often attracted to women who exhibit a sense of danger, whether through a hint of craziness or powerful sexual energy. Number 2, seduction as a transgressive element. In today's constrained and politically correct world, seduction involves crossing closely to the border of something dangerous, where one might be overwhelmed. People secretly crave excitement and are drawn to what is perceived as dangerous. Number 3, understanding women's fantasies. The discussion delves into the revelations from the book A Billion Wicked Thoughts, highlighting the differences in male and female fantasies. Men's searches often revolve around visual elements, while women prefer story-based and emotional stimulation in their fantasies. Number 4, art of seduction. The central theme emphasizes the importance of understanding the art of seduction. Seduction is not about being fake, but about acknowledging the underlying algorithm in people's minds. Men need to be more real and grounded, paying attention to individual preferences rather than relying on stereotypes. Number 5, individualizing attention. A crucial aspect of seduction is the ability to individualize attention. Men should drop preconceived notions and stereotypes and focus on the unique qualities and desires of the woman they are pursuing. Number 6, vulnerability in seduction. Seduction involves a sense of vulnerability, where individuals open themselves to the possibility of being wounded emotionally. The willingness to be vulnerable is key to creating a genuine connection in seduction. Number 7. The importance of nonverbals. Seduction is a language that goes beyond words, relying heavily on nonverbal cues. Paying attention to body language, eye contact, and mirroring behavior are essential elements of effective seduction. Number 8. Adapting to online dating. The discussion briefly touches on the challenges of online dating, emphasizing the need to pay attention to nonverbal cues even in a digital setting. Being unflappable, confident, and playful are qualities that can enhance the seduction process. Number 9. No fear of loss. Both participants stress the importance of having no fear of loss in the initial stages of dating. Playfulness and confidence, combined with an authentic expression of self, contribute to a successful seductive interaction. Number 10. Individualized flirtation styles. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to flirtation. Each person should embrace their unique style, whether it involves words, body language, or a combination of both. Confidence and authenticity are crucial components of successful flirtation. Number 11. Non-judgmental environment. Creating a non-judgmental environment is essential in seduction. Avoiding moralizing or judging behaviors fosters openness and a more relaxed atmosphere. Number 12. Being in the moment, staying present and alive in the moment, is emphasized as a fundamental aspect of successful seduction. Overthinking and worrying about future outcomes can hinder the natural flow of interaction. In conclusion, the discussion provides insights into the psychology of seduction, emphasizing the importance of authenticity, individualization, and a deep understanding of the other person's desires and fantasies.